All right, so the last video that I'm going to make for the Google Maps stuff is based on creating the location listener for GPS. If you remember in the get location method, what we did was we checked to see if the network was enabled, and if it was, we did a check on it, and then we requested location updates. And then I left as an assignment to you guys to do the GPS enabled case, which was essentially the same thing, just checking to request a location update. So you should probably put a permission check in there and then request a location update using the GPS provider. And then you give the same bandwidth or time between updates and the change for updates. And then you want to pass to it a reference to the listener GPS. So we went through this. If you remember, we did a check to see if we were, it was the first time that we were generating this. And if it was not, then you remove the updates. And otherwise, what we do is we check the permissions and launch the request location updates again. This is the case where you are receiving the callback to the on location changed method. So get location, what I want you guys to be able to do is to disable, and I showed this in class, I want you to be able to disable all of this stuff in here, the dot at your location, because this guy generates a battery drain. That method, so you get rid of it, and then you do a get location call, and that will generate one time drop of a marker, and then you'll drop it when you start tracking after that. All right, so the GPS one looks like this. We're going to check to see on our on location changed. We're going to look for dropping a marker. Or we're going to drop a marker. With the GPS provider, we're going to then set up, again, if you're checking to see if you've got your location one time, remove the updates, and then the else condition is nothing. You just don't do anything here. You don't have to kick off the listener again, or you don't have to do another request like you do with the network, because GPS will run continuously until we turn it off. On status change, though, we do need this, and we want to check the conditions, and so I'm setting up a switch case statement here. If it's available, then you don't really need to do anything. You're up and running. You got a fix from GPS, and you're good to go. If it's out of service, then that means you don't have GPS anymore. Maybe you got into a building where GPS was not visible. The satellites weren't visible, so you had to. You'll want to generate your position location from other mechanisms. Specifically, we'll want to do it with the network. So we do a permission check. If it's not, if it is not granted, so this is the usual stuff that we use to check for permission granted. We return, and otherwise permission will be granted. And we're check. In this case, we check to see if we're tracking. So if we're not tracking, then we request the updates for both the network and GPS provider. So this is the out of service case. So you just want to launch them both. Specifically, you want this guy because you want to see if you can pick up the network from that point. You probably won't be able to get the GPS, but if maybe it went out of service and then you came back out of the building, it came back in. So you'd want to bump that over. Temporarily unavailable, maybe you went underneath a tree or something and you weren't able to see it. So you got this message. You want to, again, launch the network and GPS providers to see if you can pull it back in. And then the default would be, again, you do the same thing. So it's basically the same code in each one of the cases, with the exception of that first case where you're available. Available, you don't do anything. The rest of them, you'll want to check permissions and then do a request. All right, dropping a marker. We drop a marker in the beginning of our on status on location changed for both listeners. In that case, you want to set up your location. So we need a location manager not to be null, otherwise we'll get a null reference exception. We set up a my location variable with the last known location. And then we don't need to do this code, so don't worry about that. We set up a user location lat long object, initialize it to null, and as long as our my location, which was from the get last known location, which it should be available because we are dropping a marker based on the provider. The provider was available at the time that the on location change was called, which was that callback that we were just in, and so we wanted to drop a marker. So we should have a get last known location. So we just want to make sure that we have it, just so we don't get any crashes. But if it is null, happens to be null, we just toast message it out and then bail out. Otherwise, we set up a user location to be a new lat long coordinate of our latitude and longitude, print out some test messages, set up a camera update. So this is an update variable of type camera update, and we want to generate a new lat long with a zoom on it, where we give it the user location and the zoom factor, and that zoom factor was set to 17 for me in the as a constant. Now we have to check to see which provider it was, because I want two different colors. If it's GPS, I want it to be red. If it's the else condition would be network, then it's going to be blue. Okay. To set up a draw marker, if you do it with a circle, you can add a circle by using the Google Maps add circle method. Then you add to it a circle option object that has a center at the location of the user, a radius of some radius, I'm using 1. And then the stroke color is red and the fill color is red, and then a width of 2. Okay, so you put those in. These two things here are just to create 2 rings in outer circle rings. And those outer circle the outer circle rings will be then just, it makes it look like a little bullseye, and I'll show that in just a second. So the else condition would be, again, the same, adding the circle, just color it blue, so you have a difference between the two. And then you have the animate camera, which will move it over to the to that position. All right, track my location, we're binding it to a key or a button press, so we use a view object here. And we're checking to see if you're not tracking the location, then that means you're going to be going from off to on. And you want to get your location. That will launch the listeners and update the my location variable. And then we set our not tracking my location to false. So now you are tracking. So you set this variable to be false. In the case where you come in and you are actually tracking, so you would have a not, you are not tracking my location, then you remove the updates because you're basically turning off this case. You've hit the button and you are tracking, so you want it to turn off, and you want the little icon that shows that you are using the location services to disappear. And in that case, you would set your not tracking my location to true in that case. All right. Clear markers, all you need to do is you have a map clear in there, and so you should be able to get that. All right, I think that's it for everything. Let me get the phone up so I can give you just a final demonstration of what this thing should look like, and then we can show that. Okay, so here's an example display of the screen. What I want to see are at least you have to have 4 buttons total. A view button, which is going to go between if I tap the button, it's going to go between the satellite view and the map view. Okay, so that should happen. Tracking, I'll show that in a second. Clear will clear all these out, and I'll show this at the end. And then search, I should be able to type in a point of interest, hit the search bar, and then it should go to wherever that location is with a marker dropped. Okay, I have mine clearing out all the markers here, so I don't want to do this just yet. All right, to track, what we've seen here is, or what we see here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, is This is my room here, and then coming out of the room, going down the hall a little bit, turning around, coming back. Once I get into open space, I get the red dots as a GPS, and then the blue dots are when the satellites are not available, it tries to get the network updates, right? So that's why we're going back and forth between enabling network when GPS is unavailable. When I'm inside my room, you see that there's lots of dots that are being generated here. This is the general area where my desk is, and so when I'm tracking, it starts dropping them down. When the camera is enabled, it will zoom out to that level 17 and then and generate a view on that. And these are the circles, the inner ones filled, and then the two outer ones are those outer circles with a transparent fill. All right, so if I hit track, what I should see then is see this little icon right up here. This thing in here tells me that I'm using battery power. I saw a drop of another location marker down in here where I am in the room, and then it zoomed out in the map. So I didn't do that myself. This was the automatic zoom with the camera. Okay, so I should see that thing update about every 5 seconds, and if I move my map over, and then when it makes I'll see that move over, but when it does drop another marker at my location, it should bring it back into center and then zoom out to where that spot is. Okay, I will clear out now. If I hit this button in here, what I should see are all of the little markers clear. Okay, so those are going to clear out, and then because I'm still tracking, I should see some jump in there eventually. When I hit the search bar, if I see, if I have Starbucks in my view, okay, there's a little dot there that said, okay, we're still in network mode, and we're still tracking. Okay, if I do my my search for Starbucks, and I'm going to turn tracking off right now. So I turn tracking off. I should see the toast message says it's tracking off. I could lose my little display that says I'm not wasting battery power. And then if I do a search on my with Starbucks, then I see it zoom into this marker here, and if I can zoom in and out of there, but if I tap that marker, it should give me the address of that Starbucks. I'm going to tap it, and here's the address of that Starbucks. So this one here is not catching the one that's across the street from us here at CCA, and that is because of the API that we're currently using. So I'm okay with you using the one that we currently use. If you want to get something that's more precise, I can show you how to do that, but it's a little bit more involved. Okay, I can hit the clear markers now again, and everything would clear out. So that was cleared, so I just hit that marker, and then I can start tracking again. My tracking location is on, and now I get my dots back into there. All right, so that's basically all I want to see. All those pieces in there should be in working, and I should be able to track on off, and then you can generate a track around the campus.